Hello everybody, welcome back to the Reinsurance podcast, where this time I am live in Bermuda as the Lloyd's Lab Cohort 14 comes out here for our Shaping the Future of Reinsurance in Bermuda theme. We're doing a few special episodes whilst we're here, one with Rosie from the Lloyd's Lab, another with George from the BMA, and then also finally with James from Cactus, a former Lloyd's alumni who is now based here in Bermuda as well. So do enjoy listening, send us your thoughts, and we look forward to seeing you for some more Lloyd's Lab themed episodes towards the end of the accelerator, and of course around the timing of Demo Day in July. We'll see you there. Welcome, George, to the show. Delighted to have you here for our special Bermuda Lloyd's Lab series. Welcome to our studio that you helped us find as well. So thank you for that.
Yes, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
No, good. Delighted to have you here. And I wondered, before we get into everything about the BMA and the Lloyd's Lab and everything that we're here for this week, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself in the world of insurance?
Sure. I guess my story is a little bit dramatic in a way that me coming to the world of insurance came out of the crisis. So I came here in Bermuda as a hedge fund accountant. It only lasted for less than 3 years. So basically, when the crisis hit in 2008, the funds were liquidated, and then they went to Canada, but I decided to stay. So that's really where I found myself in insurance management. So
nice.
And I love it since then, and now this pivot to technology and innovation is just really an outcome of things that happened to my career since then. So yeah.
Fascinating. So how did that end up to the point where you are now? And tell us a bit about your role at the BMA and how that relates to tech and innovation.
So I guess my first few years in the Bermuda Monetary Authority is the first 4 years I was traditional supervision principal. I was looking after groups and large commercial insurers, more on the P&C side of things. So I love the job. I love doing on-site, doing supervisory colleges and all that. But then I also have this very high inclination to technology and innovation. So even within my role, I was using technology and just out of the box thinking to improve myself, to get better, to be more efficient than others. And so it was really a very good outcome. And then when crypto sort of really hit the all-time high back in 2017, we had that decision to have its own separate legislation of the digital asset business. So I was given this small unit within the insurance department, this innovation unit that looks after the Sandbox and the regulatory innovation hub, and so that was really the most of my years since then when I joined the BMA.
Oh, brilliant. And it is amazing how the BMA has done this as a regulator, which we think of as quite strict and focused on supervision, to see such an innovative approach. I actually remember I was here in Bermuda in 2018, I think it was, and the Premier of Bermuda stood up in front of a large conference gathering and said, Bermuda is going to be at the forefront of innovation, and it seems to have carried on.
Yes, yeah. and that was when the DABA legislation was introduced for the first time, and but also not really as popular with the digital asset, but also on the insurance side of things. That was also when we launched the insurance regulatory sandbox, and that's really, since then we kept improving and enhancing the framework, and we're building on past successes and just really trying to improve where we are and how we got here.
Amazing. And just for anyone who hasn't heard of this concept of a regulatory sandbox before, could you explain a bit about what that means? What is a regulatory sandbox?
Yes, so I guess in the simplest term or form, it's meeting the companies where they are in whatever stages. Normally, the traditional side of things is you got to be ready when you come to the BMA and ask to be given a license to operate as an insurance company or a bank or a fund administrator and all that. But this shift in paradigm is just really opening the door for startup companies, those that are still developing their ideas. Some ideas formulated already, but they wanna test it first into whether or not it's gonna work using technology. I think at the onset, this approach is really all about looking at being close to the innovation ourselves. So while we have our regular mandate as a regulator, my unit is at least have the privilege of being close to innovating companies like yourselves, being at the forefront of innovation. But have the flexibility to allow companies to operate in a way that they can experiment, they can innovate, have limited or narrowed parameters to make sure that they can operate in a safe space, and in return be allowed to have some waivers in the regulatory obligations and all that, because what we want them to focus is on the business model itself, like pushing the boundaries in a safe manner with regulations still in place, and really hopefully in that process the dynamics between the companies innovating and the BMA being out there providing you real-time feedback and guidance about what may not work, what could work, what is in violation of certain rules or not, or maybe in that conversation some of our regulations in essence will not be effective anymore, so we need to look for new ways of actually regulating that innovation. So I guess just making that platform available for companies like yourself. So
makes complete sense. And I was going to ask you, how do you typically engage with organizations like the Lloyd's Lab, but is that typical, or is this a special?
No, not quite. Yeah. So although Lloyd's is of course a quasi-regulator, so they act like a regulator, but that's a special mandate given to them by regulators, in line with us. But we do participate in a lot of international regulatory forums, but the Lloyd's MOU would be our first like really outside the typical regulatory conversations. And the goal here is just really to open up, first, the recognition that Bermuda and London markets are very much intertwined. So we don't think of ourselves as the competition, but rather complementary or partner markets to London. And there's a lot of untapped potential out there for us to do. So the Lloyd's Lab, I think they have been also created or established almost the same time, about the same time.
I think so. Yeah.
I think 2017, 2018, that would be about the same time they were also created. So we share that same vision in looking at innovation as a source of future-proofing both markets. And so our CEOs talk together, and from there that MOU was actually signed. And so innovation is one of those low-hanging fruits that we have. So we don't normally do this, but I think this is just one of those things where BMA is trying to enhance what is already done and trying something new to actually regulate the future. So we hope that this is just the beginning, and the MOU is broad enough to do other things. So the Lloyd's Lab engagement will be the first. Now we're actually looking at education and professional development, how things that we can jointly do as markets, and then many more. So we're looking forward to having more engagement, not just with the Lloyd's Lab, but in the wider program of all the ecosystem that Lloyd's has coverage.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And Lloyd's, I think, likewise, hasn't done this with anybody else before. What do you think it is that makes Bermuda so special that Lloyd's would say we're going to do a special theme just for reinsurance in Bermuda?
Yes, so I guess, going back to my point earlier about Bermuda and London markets being very much complementary, I think our destinies are sort of intertwined together, and so we need to make sure that we stay relevant to the future that we would like. And I think what's special with Bermuda is that we specialize in the complex type of risk, wholesale risk, so things that are not normally being prioritized or thought about by regulators in the domestic markets. We specialize on those things, and I think that's also good or effective as part of the risk management framework is to diversify, right? So when you can focus London markets or US markets that are domestic in nature, they can focus on the domestic risk, but then you outsource or diversify some of those complex risks so that you can focus on what you specialize best. So I guess the future that we would like would be really to have this more enhanced and streamlined relationship between the markets, and having that Bermuda connection with London will be really just one of the building blocks for success here.
Makes sense. And to understand this better, I guess, as the BMA, how do you fit in with the Bermuda market as a whole, and how can you enable the companies that participate here to thrive and innovate? What's the way that fits together, I guess?
Great question. So I think it was really the premier or maybe one of his cabinet members that have coined this before, but they say the real Bermuda Triangle is not the mystical place itself, but actually this distinct relationship and collaboration between BMA the regulator, the industry, as well as the government. So these three working really closely together is the secret sauce for success of Bermuda, and we've been doing that for many years with just traditional the sector. But now, if you use technology, the use of innovation, it's just going to be a very interesting future that we have.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess we now lean a bit more towards the Lloyd's Lab Bermuda Monetary Authority Special Edition. How much have you been able to get involved so far? What are you excited to be doing? I know this week everybody's landing in Bermuda and you're getting involved. How do you see that?
Yeah, I'm so excited for this week, actually. So, since the signing of the MOU, I've been running most of the things, at least really making sure that the vision that our CEO have really inculcated in us, we make it happen. So since the signing of the MOU, I was responsible for forming the Bermuda Industry Working Group. So the BMA, we can't do this alone. So we work very closely with the industry. So I convened industry associations. So I've got ABR involved, I got the BDA involved, the Bermuda Captive Network, who are doing their captive conference this week as well. So and even other sectors within Bermuda ecosystem. So we also have the runoff ERLA, or the runoff and legacy companies. They are also involved in that. So this working group has become my sounding board in just really thinking about how we can build this success. So we were responsible for forming the Bermuda Reinsurance team. So those problem statements that were thrown out there back in December, we formulated them. So those teams, we carefully selected what this partnership has to benefit Bermuda market itself. So we need to define the problems, and then we need to articulate it, strategically, so that those that will work with us will actually have a clear path of what we're trying to solve here. So, and then of course, I'm not working for this by myself. So I have an amazing team at the BMA, combination of all people from the legal, policy side of things. Of course, my own team on the supervision side. Our corporate affairs team, so Kelly has been working with you as well. So it's a teamwork essentially, and of course the amazing expertise of Rosie and everybody at Lloyd's Lab. Their platform is quite robust, and I think that's a really good partnership out there. Like we have our own purpose here at the Bermuda, but then Lloyd's already has a blueprint and the playbook of running these things. So we just sort of plugged into that. And so, the dynamic has been really great so far.
No, brilliant. And do you think it's important that this is led by regulators? The way you mentioned convening all of the market there and bringing everybody together. So I guess that's not common in lots of jurisdictions.
Yeah, I don't think
the regulator at the front rather than at the back.
Exactly. That's what's really unique about Bermuda. So we, BMA tends to be very proactive. At least, as far as I have been involved, we have been really proactive. But I also have this sense that that's a luxury on my part, because that I have a focused unit that looks after innovation and market development. But behind the scenes, somebody else is taking care of business. There's a traditional supervision team, like a much bigger team that handles everything, making sure that everything else is looked after. So we do have that to allow us to think beyond outside the box, for example. So it's been amazing so far. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Are there any recent or upcoming stories that you'd be excited to share, or case studies of things that you've worked on?
Yeah, so the Lloyd's engagement is just one of those things that I look after. So my team is also responsible for looking after emerging risks and areas. So earlier this year, our team published a discussion paper on payment service business.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we're trying to modernize the payment service ecosystem in Bermuda. So that was also led by the FinTech department. And then we also, I think a month before that, we post a call for embedded supervision, call to action by the industry. So we're looking for really the market to, come up with some proposals to the BMA in looking after, to supervise DeFi in particular. So that's another initiative. The beginning of the year as well, we have the digital identity service provider a consultation paper. So that's another sector that we think that will be complementary to the digital asset space. So a lot of things going on. So by next month, I'm hoping to publish an AI paper. Where our team is hoping to publish a consultation paper on AI framework. So. And a number of things. So this is, again, going to be a very busy year for the BMA.
It makes a lot of sense, though, to have them running side by side. You're simultaneously researching and understanding the needs and opportunities that are out there, as well as engaging with possible partners.
Absolutely.
Who you might be able to bring.
And what's good is that it just becomes a dynamic conversation, right? Rather than just playing catch up all the time.
Yeah.
So that's been really the benefit of this new setup that we have. We are close to the innovation through working with the industry. We work with partners like Lloyd's Lab and even other regulators as well. We are part of, I don't know if you know, but we were part of the Global Financial Innovators Network. So that's like-minded regulators like us that are like still a network of regulators and stakeholders, but looking after, the focus is innovation. So we've been an active member of that. So, just all this information around us, and then turn it into something tangible that hopefully facilitates progress in the market.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, actually, which is close to the reinsurance theme and kind of a part of it, but also a bit special, is this whole alternative capital world. Because I guess historically, you could argue a lot of alternative capital wouldn't exist in the way it does without Bermuda and without the work the BMA has done in terms of defining different vehicles, etc. How have you seen that space of alternative capital evolve? And where do you see it going, with the help of the BMA?
Sure. I have a caveat, though, because we have a dedicated team that looks after the alternative capital supervision space. But I think in general, I can say, though, that slowly but surely the alternative capital sector is becoming mainstream. So, by that I mean it's going to be it's becoming a normal part of risk management framework or strategy for any business. Like a lot of the companies that we have here have a sidecar facility. Like everybody's tapping into third-party capital just to diversify risk or even have more, put more monies on their bottom line. So it's just becoming a staple part of a business strategy. And I think Bermuda's regulation plays a key role in that one. So we did have this introduction of the SPI class, which is also an innovation itself, back in 2010 when it was introduced. So it's just really, I think it's becoming a necessity, and it's complementary as well to what's happening in the risk landscape right now. So if you look at cyber, for example, or say the climate, the climate change issues, a lot of that capital is, we have a shortage of supply to cover those risks, and of course the established traditional markets, they have their own risk management appetites set already. So the third, whereas we have a more willing third-party capital that can sort of supplement to that or take part of that reinsurance tower, for example. So it's just really becoming more necessary, a necessity, if you will. And what we're seeing now, with the advent of parametric insurance, the use of blockchain, for example, or tokenization of assets to just raise capital very, very quickly. All of that developments just really powers this whole sector to take it to the next step. So yeah, we're excited in all of that development, and I think my space is seeing it as becoming more a norm in this day. So a lot of the companies that we have in the Sandbox have their eyes on the ILS space, like the problem of trapped capital, for example. Like what can we do to help with that? Like what can technology do to help improve disclosure and transparency, and just putting more confidence to the investing public. So a lot of I think there's a lot of promise there, and regulation, of course, will have its role, but also the industry also has to step up. In terms of just the willingness to standardize the data, maybe tighten up the contract language, and depending on where you look, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but the promise and the potential is there.
Definitely, and I'm sure you remember when we did the Lloyd's Lab pitch day, that's very much what we stood up and said as well, was hang on a minute, this alternative capital thing isn't going away, and reinsurance is soon going to be very, very frequently featuring alternative capital as part of a standard set of protections. So excited to see that space continue to grow. But it's not the only thing, I guess, that we're seeing in the wider world around us. All sorts of change. You've got the AI mysteries and climate and all sorts of other things. What excites you personally about the next 5 to 10 years and the possible innovation that we might see happen, and how the BMA might tackle some of these other themes? I know you mentioned lots of papers that you've been doing, but on a longer term, do you see even bigger, stranger things on the horizon?
I don't know. That's a hard question, because I love everything. I like all these developments that we're seeing, and we're addressing them individually and respectively as well, looking at the risk. But I guess in the overall, I think the convergence of all of this is where the power comes from. Like AI on its own may not be as powerful, but when you combine that with the power of blockchain, the power of more collaboration or willingness between the parties interacting in the ecosystem, I think that's where the true power lies, and the application to all of that. So tokenization of real world assets, for example, there's a lot of more untapped potential for that. Climate finance, which is also one of those areas where Bermuda is looking to be a leader right now. So when you mix that with the capital, the technology, and the innovative mindset together, I think that would be really, a lot of these applications would be amazing to see if it all comes together. But I don't think we're going to get there overnight, so there's still a lot of work to be done. So in the BMA, we were looking at a number of these things. One of those opportunities too that we have is looking at all the applications of AI, the use of Gen AI in particular, and then just mixing that with the power of this blockchain to distribute both the risks, the information, just managing all of that together, and also using that into a particular issue like the climate change, or the carbon credit economy, for example. Like how can we actually make this better so that you move the dial by allowing the capital to flow in a safe manner, but also really contributing to the targets of the world. So really exciting future. I think we are hoping that the BMA will still be relevant by then, and working with the industry is really key here, and all the stakeholders involved.
Yeah, and makes complete sense, and exciting to have so many, but probably intimidating as well to have so many big issues to tackle.
Absolutely, but I'm fortunate that it's not just me doing all of that. So we have a big team in the BMA who are quite keen in solving real problems. But as much as the flow of money is needed, I think the BMA can still be relevant where it is, and can be helpful in facilitating innovation. So.
Brilliant. And I guess what would your message be before we wrap up to innovators who are out there, not just in Bermuda, I guess, but around the world, thinking of where to launch the next big thing? Why would you say come to Bermuda, come and work with the BMA? We'll be your launch pad.
I'm not allowed to advertise, of course. So of course I have a bias for Bermuda, because this is where I live, and this is my my home now. So but maybe the overall message here is don't be afraid to speak with your regulator. Like if your regulator a lot of them also just have their own perspective. And I think for innovators, it's important to like listen beyond what the regulators are saying, but trying to like really understand where they're coming from, like what are really the interests that they are trying to protect here, and maybe that shift in mindset, like putting yourself in the hat of the regulator. That's what we actually reached to achieve, but the current rules don't necessarily give that desired outcome. We have this thinking because now that we have that perspective in mind, we use technology, we shift the processes, for example, but we may actually achieve the same outcome in a more efficient manner. So just having that conversation, the BMA is we have the privilege of being able to work closely with the market up to this point, and we want to continue doing it right now. Hopefully we can make it even better now, because a lot of these conversations happen manually, right? So I don't know, maybe in the future there can be a future where everybody just gets on a GitHub, for example, and BMA will be there. So those kind of thinking that's really where some of my interests lie, like really where the next steps are. But at the gist of it is really just being available for the market. So I guess lastly for the innovators is thinking about the societal good. So the regulators are there to protect the interest of the public. So whether that's the investors, the policyholder, or the counterparties, in a transaction, companies just need to understand that, so that everything that you do, it revolves around that. That would be the ultimate goal. So once they understand that, that they can probably think beyond the forms or the checklists and all of that, and maybe in their own innovative way can suggest to the regulators, like, what can smart contracts do, what can tokenization actually do or accomplish that will help achieve that same outcome without actually going through all of these traditional forms that we have. So I don't know if that's enough message out there for innovators.
I think a great message for the innovators, but also for other regulators who I'm sure see Bermuda and the BMA as a role model of how they might think about tackling innovation as well. Yeah,
well, the good news too is that, because as I said, we participate in a lot of this international cooperation with our fellow regulators. So a lot of regulators have that same they are on board. So I guess while everybody, not everyone's in the same speed or pace of getting in there, we may be a bit ahead with others, but I think the good news is that slowly but surely regulators around the world are becoming aware of the benefits of being, just becoming more listening, maybe even more open to suggestion, rather than having a rigid, rules-based regime. So
makes complete sense. And I'm sure, like me, you're also looking forward to the events this week. What's your thing you're most excited about this week?
Yeah, I look forward to meeting the rest of the companies, and hopefully the conversation with you guys and the industry and the government and all the ecosystem of Bermuda that we're trying to put together this week. And have meaningful engagements and hopefully commercial relationships with the companies. So.
Brilliant. Well, likewise, looking forward to it, and thank you again so much for taking the time out of your busy day, both regulating and innovating.
Thank you for having
with us on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks so much for listening to all of our Bermuda Lloyd's Lab Special Edition themed episodes. We'll be back in touch following, of course, the Lloyd's Lab Demo Day coming up in July. We hope to see you there in person, but if not, we'll be bringing you all of the action here on the podcast afterwards as well. See you there.